We'll call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. for a workshop. We're going to do the normal opening at 7 with the regular meeting. This is a workshop to talk about policies and procedures. Who's going to lead what report or start the discussion?
Well, I can introduce it real quick. So we wanted to have a moment tonight, finally, our first meeting in the building. We have almost everybody here, and we wanted to go over sort of just the general policy for planning commission meetings, how they're run, what we need to do, and then we also want to do a quick overview, high-level overview of what we're going to be looking at in next year, just so we're ready. We have a lot of things working, a lot of projects going on, and we want to give you a brief preview.
Oh, good. Okay.
Mr. Chair, is there any other house rules that we need to do, like recognizing our teammates online or our commissioner online?
Paul, can you hear okay?
Yes, thanks. I can hear and I can see fine. Thanks so much.
Okay, so we'll do the normal opening like in most meetings at the start of the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. So
for the purposes of this workshop, we have one commissioner online tonight and one commissioner who's absent. She is on a flight back to the Bay Area.
okay. Edith, do you want to start?
Sure, if we'll just get started.
Yeah.
First of all, good evening, Commission. It's great to see you in person. Good evening, teammates and community members. My name is Edith Ramirez, Assistant City Manager for Development Services. It is wonderful to be here with you in person. We have, in addition to Ms. Jennifer Carmen and Assistant City Attorney Cynthia Hassan, we have with us here in the room our City Attorney, Don Larkin. Thank you, Don, for joining us. And Matt Mayhood, our Economic Development Director. Online, we have joining us Housing Director Rebecca Garcia. I believe she is online. I can't see who's joining us. The purpose of tonight is to just get us started back in the room with some basic conversation on reminding us on what our norms, our procedures, and we're hoping to get through some information, but really open it up for conversation and dialogue for you tonight. So with that, and this is the part that I am so glad our city attorney is here with us tonight. As we get reminded on our policies and procedures, as part of the agenda, there was an attachment that kind of reminds us and talks about how we're supposed to be running meetings. I only highlighted this one as a place for us to start, especially today, being that it's election day. One of the things to ground ourselves with, it is our policy, our norm to have decorum and recognize the importance of the trust invested that the public has on us in the purpose of doing our public business, and inviting us, not only you, Commission, but inviting us teammates and the members of the public to join us in following up and keeping with this expectation of decorum. I will run through some of these meeting expectations and then I'll stop and kind of hand it over to our city attorney to say anything else that he wishes to add. But when we're thinking about coming back to meetings and being in person, reminding us on what's the best way to have effective meetings, always invite you to not, you obviously always read your packet, but to the extent that you can and are able to ask questions in advance of the meeting, it helps us run more efficient and effective meetings. If we know what are the questions, we can prep for them. To the extent that you have the ability to project the project site and get acquainted with the neighborhood, that always helps. Reminding us to encourage active listening and staying focused on what the purpose of our role here is, which is policy. And just reminding us to be mindful of everyone's role. You as policymakers, commissioners, you have one role. We as staff have a different role to present to you our best recommendation. Sometimes it is our because of the profession that we have within the House of City Hall. Sometimes it's because of the consultants that we bring on board. We are we're trying to bring in the expert opinion to you for you to review. You then take that opinion or that recommendation and then also listen to the neighborhood and to the public comment, and considering to use public comment for what it is, public comment that kind of adds on to your list of different pieces of information as you make decisions, but treating public comment as for what it is. Reminding us to be respectful. And then the last thing is to protect the public forum of civility. Not only us in the way that we talk to each other, but reminding us and our members of the public that when they come and join us in this public debate, they either contribute or take away from our ability to keep and protect that public forum dialogue. And so therefore it's important that we protect that space. I will stop here and let Dawn probably formalize a little bit more of this conversation, and then anybody else that wants to add anything to that.
Thanks. And I wasn't sure till this afternoon that I was coming to this meeting, so I don't have anything prepared. But I do want to talk a little bit about. This is for most of you. I think this is going to be just a reminder, and I think maybe for all of you a reminder. But the importance of the Planning Commission and the reason that your roles are so important is that this is really the opportunity where the community and the commission have an opportunity to do a deep dive on projects. The city council often they've got much longer agendas. They don't have time to get into the weeds the way that the Planning Commission is supposed to. And it's also not always the most convenient forum for the public to share their views on projects that are coming before the city at the council meetings, because oftentimes those things don't get heard until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and most of us either are asleep or would be asleep if we were allowed to be. And so the Planning Commission is really the opportunity that the public has to come and talk about these issues in greater detail. And so that's a really important part of your role. And so in doing that, I think the maintaining the decorum is really essential, because we want the public, whether the members of the public have popular opinions or unpopular opinions, we want everybody to feel welcome to come and express their opinions about projects. It's also important, though, to remember that you serve in two primary roles. One is your advisors to the city council, important advisors to the city council on legislative decisions. So any zoning ordinance or development ordinance or subdivision ordinance that goes to city council for approval first comes to the Planning Commission to hear your input and your thoughts and your guidance. And that's really an important opportunity for you to synthesize the feedback you get from the community and pass that on as part of your recommendations to the city council. The second role that you play, and arguably the one that's the most important, because oftentimes you are the decision makers, is when you're sitting as what we call a quasi-judicial body. You don't wear black robes and bang gavels, well, except for the chair, but you are essentially sitting as the judge and jury on certain types of development projects. These are things like the maps that you see, the tentative maps for projects, conditional use permits. And then on each of these types of applications, what you're doing is taking those zoning ordinance rules and determining how they apply to the specific project. And it's a different role for you, because in that sense, the applicant is a property owner. They've got constitutional rights under the Fifth Amendment to their property interests. And they're entitled to due process and equal treatment under the law. They're entitled to an unbiased decision maker. And so you are, as planning commissioners, get to take in all the input you get from the public and from the professional staff and the experts and the consultants, and then really figure out, does this project that you're being asked to look at, does this conditional use permit, is that something that the applicant is entitled to under our code? And in those cases, it's a different role for you, but it's in many ways more important. And that's always important to keep in mind, because regardless of how you come out on your decisions, sharing how you came to that decision is really helpful, especially if it gets appealed to the city council. But oftentimes it ends with you. You make that decision. So it's an important thing to remind people of, especially now that we're back in person and we're going to be looking. Zoom was very useful in many ways, but I think you actually really will get a better sense of the community interests and the issues involved being here in person. So I think we can look forward to that, being back here in person and really living those roles again in a way we couldn't necessarily do behind a screen.
Thank you, Don. Any questions on that? And as we get into questions, I will be mindful to tell you the next chapters of this workshop, just so you know what you have looking forward to. After we get through this chapter, Jennifer will talk to us about what's in the work program for you for 2023 vis-a-vis planning, land use, and trainings. After that, Matt Mayhood will speak to you about economic development, and then Rebecca will talk to you about housing. So just so we kind of have a little bit of the lay of the land.
Wait, go ahead.
Your mic on?
This evening would be an opportunity to talk about the high-level issues facing the Planning Commission. Will that be like the fourth or fifth item, or should we insert ourselves at the appropriate time?
So that's a very good question. Yes, this is the workshop to make it whatever you want to talk about, everything that we don't have on the agenda. So then therefore, if I may recommend, I don't know if you want us to just get through the content and then have it open so you can go into other chapters.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, that works.
I do have one question on your slide, but it probably won't be very quick, won't be very long, but can I ask a question?
Okay.
So this is something I was reminded of before. So when you say ask questions in advance of the meeting, right, if I'm emailing questions back and forth, that's officially going on the records, right? So everything is recorded. So I think it's important to understand that whatever you say in there is all part of the public package, right? So if I ask questions or if I'm even throwing opinions on, which we usually try not to do, it's all recorded, correct? So if I send an email back saying, I have the following questions about the agenda tonight, that goes into the package.
Yeah, and because it's really important to both that commissioners don't have secret information the other commissioners don't know about, but also the public has an opportunity to understand the information that you're getting and respond to that. If the question is something that can be answered by saying, look at page 25 of the packet and here it is in paragraph 1, maybe that's not something that necessarily gets broadcast. But if it's a very specific question that's not answered already in the packet, then it's really important that everybody else gets to see that answer too.
But I'm not necessarily copying all the other commissioners with my reply to staff, right? Because to me, that kind of constitutes a potential meeting, right? So I'm just replying to you.
Right.
It's your job to make sure everybody else knows what I asked, right?
So what we do for council right now, when we get individual council questions, they get consolidated and supplemented to the agenda, not saying which council member asked, but just in general, additional questions.
So you would do something similar here, maybe? Okay.
So with that, Matt, no, back to you, Jennifer, and I can move the slides for you.
Sure. So we wanted to talk about training opportunities that will be coming up next year. The first one being the Planning Commissioner Academy. That is scheduled for Orange County this year, March 29th through 31st. They have announced it, but have not sent out the registration materials.
I thought we'd take public comment after we went through the whole staff presentation.
All right. And then some of you have been to the Planning Commissioner Academy. I highly recommend it for those who have never attended. Some of you also went to the ILG training at the Institute of Local Government. We had 2 commissioners attend that this year. We don't know the date yet for next year, but that will also be an opportunity. There is an economic development conference, the Silicon Valley Economic Development Association. Some of you are attending this year's conference tomorrow and Thursday, but the next one is scheduled for November of 2023. And then the city is going through a diversity, equity, and inclusion training for all city staff. And we do expect that training will be extended to our city council and commissioners. But I don't believe that schedule has been set yet. And if you have questions about that, I'm sure Edith can give more detail. We have a lot of projects and programs working behind the scenes right now. Some of them that we have talked about, the VMT policy, the form-based code on Monterey Corridor. We're looking at implementation regulations through the Climate Action Plan. We have a number of industrial and commercial projects currently processing, as well as housing projects, including an SB 35 project that just came in that we'll be talking to all of you about soon. And then we also have Voices School. They have a use permit. They won't be coming to you for a new decision, but they are going to be amending their design review just slightly. They have to go from 2-story to 1-story, and we're working with them on that right now. But that will also be a project that you'll see moving forward. So there's a lot going on. We don't, every time we think we're going to hit a lull in applications, we get a whole bunch of new ones. So we always have a lot going on within the development services side.
Jen, just very high level, what is the gas station thing? Sorry, just high level.
So part of the Climate Action Plan that was adopted by City Council includes an implementation measure to adopt an ordinance for no more new gas stations. We would have existing ones, and I think there's going to be some debate on if it's a charging center, is that a gas station? But as far as hard fuel, that is something that we're going to be bringing to council for consideration of a ban.
Interesting what that's meant to solve, but okay. Will be part of the discussion, I guess.
Yes.
So it was an item that was adopted in the Climate Action Plan, but it doesn't have it hasn't been actualized, so it's still going through the process, and should be coming forward in the near future. So good evening, Matt Mayhood, Economic Development Director, City of Morgan Hill. Good morning, Commissioner. Good evening, Commissioners, and we'll feel like morning, hopefully. Commissioners, teammates, and members of the public. Just briefly, I have about 6 slides. There's a lot of content. I'd like to get through it fairly quickly so we can get to your questions. This slide is, we have a very clear vision for economic development in the city of Morgan Hill. We've had a very clear vision since 2017, and Edith and the team previously put together the economic blueprint, and we have been operating on that blueprint and focused in 4 key industry areas for 5 years now: innovation, advanced manufacturing, retail, tourism, and healthcare. And we've really been focused on driving activities to support each of those economic drivers. So in innovation, advanced manufacturing, just a brief overview. Some of you were on the Planning Commission earlier in 2022 when we adopted the Industrial Preservation Optimization Policy. We prohibited fulfillment centers and sorting uses. In addition, we moved forward the ballot measure, that's ballot measure A, that's being voted on today. And the other key element within that policy was the expanded medical use within light industrial areas. So that was a key policy initiative that had been really that we needed to undertake for many years, and it has been accomplished. Butterfield 5 Tech Park, that project is completed. It is actively being leased. It's 410,000 square feet, 5 buildings, very active in the leasing. We would love to have some announcements coming to you shortly, and you'll be some of the first to know when we have secured tenants there. Redwood Tech 101 is approved. That project, they have their grading permit. And do you want to make I'll give you the formal announcement because there is a change, then we want to let you know what that change is.
Today at the San Francisco Chronicle, there was the announcement of the groundbreaking for the new park, the new business park in Morgan Hill, which has changed names to Cochrane Tech Park. So one of the quick changes that has happened at the request of the city, the developer Trammell Crow responded to our climate change and our water drought and ended up switching the landscaping and removing the redwoods as part of their landscaping plan because redwood trees actually demand a lot of water and they're not friendly to our goals and plans. Therefore, needed to change the name of Redwood Tech 101 to Cochrane Tech Park. And the announcement was in the San Francisco Chronicle today. It's exciting news. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, so it's now Cochrane Technology Park. Be referred to that in the future. So you can erase Redwood Tech 101 from your brain. Additionally, Mersho Investments, they have technically six projects under review, about 410,000 square feet within the business parks, light industrial spec development. They don't have users identified, but it does show that the market in Morgan Hill has changed. The market has matured. We have very low vacancy rates, historically very low vacancy rates. And the only available buildings right now of large industrial capacity are 755 Jarvis, which is the former Shoe Palace building that is actively being leased. And then obviously Butterfield 5, but we feel confident that those buildings will be leased in the very near term. And the reason we adopted our industrial preservation optimization policy is we are down to 92.5 acres of vacant industrial land remaining. So, and when you talk about the Mersho investments and those projects coming forward, that number will be cut down probably by 2/3 if those projects actually come to fruition.
At the land in front of the medical center in Cochrane, and the old hospital, there's a big chunk of land there right on the freeway. Is that commercial or is that industrial?
So the land in front of the DePaul Medical Center, which is north of Cochrane Technology Park, so it'd be hard to get used to saying that.
No.
There's 30 acres of land there. There are roughly 13 acres of highway commercial on the north end, and then approximately 17 acres that is office commercial. So it's about 30 acres.
About 30, okay.
Right. Okay. Retail. So currently Morgan Hill, we have 1.3 million square feet of retail space. We share our trade area with San Jose and Gilroy. Historically, we've been a little bit over retailed. That's why you had the conversation several weeks ago, looking at the Cochrane Commons 2 project and looking at a general plan amendment to move in mixed use product in there, and then obviously leaving 1/3 of that project for retail. We still want to protect that area, 1/3 of that space for retail, especially around on Cochrane Road. But one thing that really often prohibits development in Morgan Hill, both on the retail side and on the industrial side, is just the cost of greenfield development. It's very expensive. The impact fees and the offsite improvements are very expensive. So when you're looking at developing retail from the ground up, it's very costly for developers to do that. Looking forward, we do have Cochrane Commons Phase 2 with still 135,000 square feet, and then Evergreen Village at Cochrane, about 10 acres still to develop for retail. Additionally, we have long-term vacancies. The Madrone Village Phase 2 is 4.4 acres. That is the site where previously we have tried to develop some hotels. We're actively trying to figure out how we can commercialize that property. But then there are 2 vacant sites that have been fairly vacant for a fairly long time. They're both about 20,000 square feet. One at the Cochrane Plaza, which is next to the Walmart, and another one at Laurel Oaks. That's the Safeway at Tenant Shopping Center. Both 20,000 square feet. We're actively working with the commercial real estate community to find users for those vacancies. And I think in the very near future, we'd love to have some announcements coming forward to you on new users.
Question. The space next to Home Depot, is that also, that's been vacant for a while, right? It used to be, what was it? Used to be old CVS.
Yeah, that's the Laurel Oaks. That's the
Okay.
Paul, that's the Laurel Oaks.
Got it. It's the same one. Thank you.
Yeah. Safeway done, yeah. On tourism, this is an area where we continue to work really hard. In 2019, the city formed a tourism business improvement district that now Visit Morgan Hill operates the TBID, actively promoting Morgan Hill as a tourist destination. And their goal is really put heads in beds and put feet on the street to drive TOT tax. Our hotel incentive policy, we adopted that at the City Council in August of 2022. We are currently working on developing a downtown property business improvement district, a PBID, and we'll be going to the City Council next Wednesday, with actually counting the ballots from property owners to see if we have enough votes to actually formalize and create a downtown property business improvement district. The unique thing about business improvement districts, it does create a private and public partnership. So we can actually create and develop enhanced services that's really focused on making downtown clean and safe, and really making the type of investments above and beyond what the city could normally do. Last thing within downtown development, we have a boutique hotel. We have that item coming to City Council again next Wednesday night. It's already been through your process and has been recommended for approval for a 5th floor there. And then the Eads Art Gallery is under construction and they're making great progress there. Another focus to support our tourism industry is the Outdoor Sports Center, and Chris Gioni and their team are bringing forward a new master plan with a big vision of how to expand our outdoor sports center and just outdoor recreation in general. And again, we continue to use target marketing with the Visit Morgan Hill to really promote Morgan Hill as a destination for people to come visit us. Just a reminder, we do have 4 preferred hotel sites that we are trying to develop within the city, and they're mapped there, just if you can see that in a small little slide. But we are actively promoting those sites and talking to developers about how to build hotels on those sites.
Hey, Matt, I want to get on a rat hole here, but maybe this is more of a perception than reality, but there seems to be a lot of aversion to hotels. Every time they come up, either the hotel coalition doesn't want them or the community doesn't want them. It seems to be fairly integral to your tourism policy that we have hotels. I mean, I think one of the key questions that keeps getting asked is, do we need them or do we not, right? And what type of hotels we need. And I think I just see this constant conflict over hotels.
It is definitely part of our strategic plan. It's something that from an economic development standpoint, we want in the city. We are actively pursuing them. They are a good land use for us. They drive an increase in property tax. They drive TOT tax, which contributes to the general fund. And they create amenities that drive tourism that often can drive additional business and retail and restaurant. So it's actually a business driver. What the resistance in the city of Morgan Hill has been historically on hotels, I'm not quite sure I understand. But we do have aging properties that obviously we want to make sure from an economic development standpoint that Morgan Hill is putting the best product forward in hotels. So as products age, we need those hotel operators and owners to be reinvesting in their hotels. That's in part why we put together a hotel incentive program that actually had incentives to existing operators to reinvest in their hotels, but also within that incentive plan, the concept to encourage investment. Obviously, we want the highest and best hotels possible. We would love to have full service hotels that include restaurants and valet services and spas and meeting rooms and more conference rooms, because that will actually increase the number of room nights that you can actually drive into a market. But it is something from an economic development perspective. We are trying to drive that forward because it is an important component for physical sustainability for the city and the community. Moving on to healthcare.
If I may,
Yeah.
just real quickly, because I want to underline this for the commission. From the city's perspective, yes, we want them. Yes, we need them. And the answer is what type? The answer is all of them. Matt gave you the answer that we have hotels that are getting to that stage where they need to be reinvested. Hotel development is happening in the Bay Area outside of our boundaries. Over 2,500 hotel rooms being built in San Jose right now in the pipeline. So when we as a community say no to a hotel, it doesn't mean that it's not getting built in the market. It just means that we as a community don't get the benefit.
Thank you, Edith. Last piece within our economic development strategy is healthcare, and this is really an important component. We do have a preferred hospital site. It is the Rosewood site. We are actively working with that developer to promote that site as an available location for medical uses. Very active in that realm, working with the developer, looking to, obviously, we'd love to have an announcement tomorrow. We don't. That's a very long process. It's huge investments. But this is the type of services that we really want within our community. We need within our community. So it's a critical focus for us. The second is we do have the expanded medical use in light industrial, and we'll continue to use that as a tool to bring advanced medical services to Morgan Hill. We'll continue to promote and market healthcare. Just a tool that we use within the economic development site. We do have a website outside of the city's website. It's called choosemorganhill.com. We encourage you to go check it out, look at it. We actively update it with our blog. We have a monthly e-newsletter that our teammate Brittany Sherman puts out on pretty much a monthly basis. We have had a partnership with the Silicon Valley Business Journal to help promote and tell the story of Morgan Hill. A year ago, we did the Future of Morgan Hill event, and just recently we did the Meet Morgan Hill event, both very successful opportunities for us to tell Morgan Hill's story, where we're developing, where we're growing, and to help really build our connections with the development community and the brokers. We actively meet with our commercial and industrial brokers, and we really work, behind the scenes, building relationships, sharing information about available sites, companies that are looking to locate within Morgan Hill, and keeping those conversations and dialogues open. We recently had a very successful Brokers Open at Butterfield 5 that was put on by CBRE. We continue to build those relationships, and really within the economic development team, we want to be the go-to place for brokers to come for information about Morgan Hill. And we do have a couple of companies that right now in the next week or two, they're visiting Morgan Hill and they're touring the city with brokers because they're looking at Morgan Hill because they've learned about Morgan Hill through either Choose Morgan Hill or through our attendance at ICSC, which is, it's the International Shopping Center. It's the International Conference of Shopping Centers. Is that right, Ida? And Brittany and I recently attended a conference in San Diego, had great meetings with some commercial developers, looking at both retail and hotels, looking at identifying locations within Morgan Hill to bring them to Morgan Hill. But one thing that I think is really important for you to know is that oftentimes we're having conversations that may or may not come to fruition, right? So there's oftentimes conversations that we have that we can't tell you about because they're too soon, or they may never come to fruition. So we only share really good news with you, but that doesn't mean there's not work going on behind the scenes. And I see Edith trying to touch her microphone button because I think she wants to add on.
Yeah, I thank you, Matt. I think that in the world of economic development, a big part of the work is promoting the city. It is selling a vision to the brokerage community, to the businesses, to developers. And the best thing we can do as a community is be holding hands on what is it that we are seeking. So when, after 6 months of nurturing a relationship that Matt may be having with a very good user, and it takes 6 months for them to finally put money on the table and maybe secure a piece of property for a short window of time, then we have a short window to either bring this home. And the best thing we can do for that conversation is make sure that we are representing the vision and the wishes of the community. So to Commissioner Downey's earlier question as to, well, do we want this or that? And there's conflict. Please feel free to ask and question anything that you're not quite sure, because we want to be holding hands both with you and the city council. So when those projects come to you, we can bring them to the finish line.
And Matt, I had a question for you.
Okay, Paul.
Thank you. Matt, thanks so much for your presentation. One of the things that in my mind is with some of the space that you have that's long-term vacancy, is it not possible to perhaps get some small tech startups in some of these spaces? What prevents like some embryonic startup growth in the tech industry in Morgan Hill? Are there barriers to that?
I think I view the barriers of that is often they want to be located next to other ones, right? So it tends to be a density issue. We do not have a very strong, there might be one behind the scenes, but it's not a very visible startup environment in Morgan Hill or in South County. Many of the startup and incubators and those types of things are very difficult to operate. And they really want to be in very specific areas near universities, higher education, the capital markets, and supported by other entrepreneurs. And it would be a very difficult use for us to put into a commercial retail center. It's just not the type of place where you generally put it.
And I would add that those bioscience, biotech require clean rooms and a tremendous infrastructure investment that we in this community haven't quite arrived to.
Thank you so much.
We're also seeing challenges in regards to the rents that those spaces would like to charge. And we've seen a number of folks who would rather be in the industrial zones due to lower costs, not be able to afford those spaces, rec uses and other things that would be more appropriate there.
Yeah. I think the last thing I'd like to say, and just follow up on what Edith says, is we do spend a lot of time trying to build relationships and trying to bring the best projects forward for you and the city council to consider. And we spend a lot of time developing those relationships, and our job in economic development is really to nurture those relationships and then try to move them through the city process as seamlessly as possible. So giving them a lot of tender, loving care and getting them through the planning and building process and making sure that we're business friendly. Because that's really important, because when one developer has a good experience, they'll tell another developer. But if one developer has a bad experience, they'll probably tell 10 developers, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing our best to put our business friendly face on for Morgan Hill and making sure that they recognize that we're open for business. Last, I want to just cover really quickly our 2023 economic development focus areas. We are working on several signature projects. We are constantly working on projects, but we have some signature projects that we hope to be bringing forward in the coming months. Whether we see those projects come forward or not, time will tell. But again, this is the opportunity for us to really recognize that Morgan Hill is open for business, and that when these projects come before the Planning Commission and come before the City Council, that we really, take a look at these projects and evaluate them and make sure that they're right fit for the community, but recognize that people are coming forward trying to make an investment in our community, and we should be welcoming that type of investment. Second is Monterey Corridor. We, from an economic development standpoint, would love to allow greater intensification, increasing FAR on Monterey Corridor. So we're not just building housing, but building retail and supporting both kind of a mixed use and trying to maximize, and it kind of goes along with our retail concentration strategy to make sure that we're getting the highest and best uses along Monterey Corridor.
Now that we're thinking at all about redevelopment of some of the areas in the corridor, there's some really aging stuff there, that prime real estate that could do with some redevelopment. Is that an option? Is that under consideration at all?
Well, there are
In specific places?
Yeah, no, there are specifics. Jennifer and I will smile at each other. There are specific sites we'd love to see redeveloped, and we've had some conversations with some property owners, but they are limited on what they can do because of the existing FAR.
Like, that's a conversation we can have, right?
Jennifer?
It's definitely a conversation that we can have. It's not just FAR though. We have parcels along Monterey that have cross general plan designations that split the sites into two. And that also is a challenge as well. But FAR is one of our major challenges. And we'll be looking at that in the future.
There's challenges and there's blockers. They're just challenges that you can get over, right?
Well, there are challenges that need approvals for change. So we'll have to have those discussions.
Okay. We're almost out of time, believe it or not. And we've got at least one speaker, so.
Let me just
Yeah.
close out. Retail concentration, VMT policy, Edith mentioned earlier, housing element, and maximize limited commercial industrial lands. We talked about that. One thing about is economic development really wants to work with our housing department to make sure that we are connecting our residents to jobs in Morgan Hill.
Okay.
Bishop,
Hey, Rebecca.
Yep, I'm happy to go. I'll be quick. Good evening, Commission teammates. Rebecca Garcia, Housing Director. We just have one slide, so don't worry. So our role next year, it will continue to be what our role is now, implementation of the housing element, which really can be summarized as the production of new housing units, the promotion of our housing program and what affordability is and who it's for, and really increased housing communication. Preservation of our existing affordable housing, prevention of homelessness continues to be a big part of our work, and the protection of quality of life. We're looking forward to advancing farm worker housing in Morgan Hill in South County in partnership with the county. I'm looking for opportunities to respond to what we discovered through the affirmatively furthering fair housing work, that we need to identify opportunities in the east side of Morgan Hill. And then, as Matt already mentioned, connecting residents to local jobs and continuing to manage our existing programs, our inclusionary housing below market rate program and our unhoused services program. Thank you.
Okay, I'd love to someday maybe hear more as a commission about the advancing the farm worker housing. Would love to see more of that. I'd love to hear what you're doing there someday.
Okay, so we have at least one speaker, so let's open the public hearing.
We have Doug Muirhead.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. For the record, my name is Doug Muirhead. I live in Morgan Hill. That hasn't changed from 3 years ago when I used to come to these meetings on occasion and offer my views on things. I came here tonight mostly to speak about the decorum section of the meeting policies. I will get to the issue of noise, both good noise and fear of noise. But seeing that we have a police officer present tonight, and I don't recall in the years I came to these meetings pre-COVID ever seeing such an officer, I'm wondering if you're sending some sort of message to us. I bring this up because I have found that other agencies, especially the water district, are so fearful of public disruption that they actually passed an ordinance, this being the water district, where if you want to attend a board meeting or committee meeting, you must go through a metal detector and accept being searched personally and your belongings to get into the room, which I find quite offensive. So I just got a little detour there from what I really wanted to talk about, which is good noise. The most pleasant, enjoyable planning commission meeting I ever attended was when Royce's location on Cosmo and Monterey was approved. The room was full of families, adults and children. They all spoke glowingly of what a great thing this would be. You ended up voting in the affirmative and the room just erupted. It was just so pleasant. Sadly, I have to contrast this with the way the city council and the mayor view public displays of emotion. The only thing that's allowed in a council meeting is this weak little finger wave, which I find really quite offensive as well. So mostly I came here tonight simply to encourage you to continue to allow joyous noise. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers?
If I also can remind the people joining us today using Zoom, feel free to raise your hand using the features on Zoom, or if you're calling in, dial *6 and then *9 and then *6 to speak. You may also send us a public comment by emailing us at pcpubliccomment@morganhill.ca.gov. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, so I will close the public comment for the workshop and we'll move on to discussion. Does anybody have a question, Wayne?
Yeah, I had two comments. The first, compliment to the city in that maybe I just got better during the past 2 years, but the sound system to me is noticeably better. And so thank you very much. First time that I can remember we're actually heard.
You talking about in here?
Yeah, heard, not necessarily understood, but heard everything. So thank you very much. The other one is on the large issues. As we have noted in the past 2 years, coincided with COVID and the suspension really of the RDCS, we've had a lot of housing development. In fact, you don't have to talk about it, you just go out and see it. And with that, I think there's some very good things. More people can move here, and that's great. They want to move here. Some people may have a concern about that because of the amount of housing, the type of housing. However, for us, I think the larger concern is really the impacts. We're moving at a much quicker pace than we had anticipated. So I'm hopeful, if not today, at some time in the future, we could really dedicate quality time for us to discuss that. You know, with the next 3.5 years or so of the same business, basically everything's going to be driven by supply and demand and the economy. We could end up with much more housing than we have. Perhaps some of it vacant too, given the economics of it all. But the impact when they are filled on our infrastructure could be significant. And so what are we doing about it? And what are our plans?
And one thing that we are doing that's about to get started, well, it's not about to get started, we're developing the scope for it, is a transportation master plan. We have realized that, as you just said, the pace of development is moving a lot faster since 2020. The new housing laws have been primarily the reason for that, because it suspended RDCS. And so we're going to be looking at the cumulative impacts of that, what we need to do as far as revamping our circulation element in the general plan. And that starts with the transportation master plan, looking across the city at transportation in general. And we're working on that RFP right now for that project. Not sure how long it will take, but it is something that's underway.
But also, don't we review all the master plans once the housing element's set?
Yes. And that is something, our infrastructure capacity is something that is being, we look at that quite often, and our public services department and engineering department really keeps track of that, especially on our utility infrastructure, and making sure that we can meet the needs as development moves forward.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I guess I got one. Rebecca?
Yes,
She's this? Okay.
I sure.
Current cycle, are we going to meet the numbers?
That was our plan. If we do not meet them, we will come very close. There is just one project in particular that we were banking on coming by December, and their funding is not all secured as of today. This is the Magnolias project. However, they have applied for other funding sources, specifically farm worker housing, Joe Cerna funding sources. So they're waiting to see if they receive this funding source, which is critical. If they do, then I believe that we will. If they don't, it's possible that we'll just come very close.
And with the housing element and the pipeline projects, if we don't, it's likely we will meet our next RENA in the first few years of the cycle. It's going to be relatively quick, and we will be off that SB 35 list as soon as we meet that number.
All right. And I have one question for Matt. The property that's across the street, across Condit, and north of the housing that's north of the sports complex, right up against Monterey. Is there any activity on that property? I want to say Burger King, but it's not Burger King, is it?
You said Monterey.
Oh, I said Monterey, sorry. East Dunn in the freeway. East Dunn,
You're talking about China Bay.
yes.
Yeah. So we have, we've had one inquiry on part of that site. And I'm not sure what happened to them, but that has a PD on it, and they need to flush out the PD if someone was going to come in. And at least what I heard was that particular entity didn't want to do that, or took a step back and is trying to decide what to do next.
Sounds familiar. Okay.
I will say, one of the things that we're mindful is that with new legislation coming, in 2023 being a different year, the best thing we can do for our economic sustainability and for the quality of life is to try to advance development on the commercial and industrial sites. Because otherwise, whatever is vacant is always at risk. And then we move forward with an imbalance of jobs and housing. So having said that, we'll continue to work with the team on how do we move forward some of those potential projects, whether it's an FAR issue that we need to bring back to you, to the commission, that will be very much part of the work program for us in 2023.
And we'll be coming forward with information about the new pieces of legislation that could force a flip of commercial land. Those won't go into effect until July 1st of 2023. So we have a little bit of time to prepare.
Okay. No other questions. Well, some of those topics, Paul, am I missing something from you?
No, Chair. Thank you very much.
All
I'd
right.
just like to say, thank you so much for this presentation. I love the strategy information. Really good.
Okay, with that,
Sure, can we take a 5-minute break?
yeah, that's what I was going to suggest as we wrap up the workshop and prepare for the regular meeting. So do we technically take a break, I guess, for 5 minutes.
Hi,
Hi, nice to meet you. Jeff.
Jeff?
Jim.
Jim,
Jim
Jim
Wilson.
Wilson, okay. You related to Bob Wilson? Please.
No, no.
Okay.
There's a few of us around.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Susie Wilson, yeah, on and on. Well, hey, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for
You
coming.
come back when we were actually meeting in person.
Yeah, this is, I didn't even know which building we were in.
Uh,
I might go over Rosie's over.
The conference and my sister who was coming. Music. So hang out.
For dinner now and then we'll.
Huh? Yeah, it says it is. Oh, I just gotta leave out. Okay, so I'll call the regular meeting of the planning commission for November 8th to order. Attendance?
Thank you, Chair Mueller.
And the posting. Thank you.
Let's see, Chair Mueller,
Here.
Commissioners Tonda,
Here.
Habib,
Here.
Downey,
Here.
Blake. Is he back?
Paul, are you back?
I am back.
Perfect, thank you. Wilson
Here.
and Kumar has an excused absence tonight. If I may also declare the posting of the agenda.
Yes.
Tonight's meeting agenda was duly noticed and posted in accordance with Government Code Section 54954.2.
Okay, thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Tonda, would you lead us, please?
Sure. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, so now is the public comment period. And this is for non-agendized items, and the planning commission can't really comment or take any action on anything that's on the not on the agenda. So Jenna, would you tell everybody how they can address the commission at this time?
Thank you, Chair Mueller. If you're joining us today using Zoom and wish to provide public comment, you may do so by using the raise hand feature. If you're calling in using your phone, you can use the raise hand feature by dialing *9 and then dialing *6. You may also provide public comments to us at pcpubliccomment@morganhill.ca.gov. Each speaker will receive 3 minutes. If you wish to speak on the behalf of someone else, you will receive 1 additional minute per speaker. If you are speaking on the behalf of 4 or more people, your comments will be limited to a total of 7 minutes. Please make sure to state each person's name for the record. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any speakers? I see no one coming forward here. How about online?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, at this point then I will close the public comment on non-agendized items and move on to the orders of the day. We only have one item other than the normal stuff at the end of the meeting. Therefore, I will call up the first item, which is a cleanup ordinance, cleaning up typos and other things in municipal code text. Jennifer, hello. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Adam Piskowski, Principal Planner with the Long Range Plan Division. So the item before you tonight is a city initiated code amendment to modify various code provisions within the code, which implements minor amendments due to clerical errors and inconsistencies within Title 18. It's also amending our ADU chapter to reflect state law changes in ADUs, so accessory dwelling units. And that's due to Senate Bill 897 and Assembly Bill 2221. And these, I'll go through all the changes in summary. So this slide identifies all the minor, very, very minor clerical errors on this slide. So this year's municipal or miscellaneous code amendments, staff has located several minor clerical errors, including omitted words, incorrect titles, and incorrect references within these particular sections. And then going into a little bit more details on some other sections, we have Table 1844-2, which is our minimum accessory structure setbacks, as well as Chapter 1844, which is our accessory structures and uses. So these are proposed to be amended to remove covered patios. And that's because patios are defined as not having walls or a roof in the zoning code. We are also clarifying setbacks for decks and to allow roof structures such as sheds with a height of 8 feet or less to have a side and rear setback of 3 feet.
Adam, there was an email coming today, a supplement. Was it about this topic?
No, it's in a later topic. No,
Later topic.
I'll mention when that comes into play. On this next slide, I have subsection C of section 1852.030C, which is the measurement of fence and wall height. This is within our fence and wall chapter. So this is proposed to be amended to clarify that the section only applies to fences or walls that are not located on a retaining wall, and to not be interpreted to apply to fences or walls that are erected on top of a retaining wall with different finish grades on either side of the retaining wall. The next one is in regards to chapter 1864, which is our landscaping chapter, and that's proposed to be amended to allow turf areas for active recreation if the turf areas are consistent with our water conservation chapter. So this slide pertains to accessory dwelling units. We have section 1856.040, which is our lot coverage exceptions. And this is just clarifying that ADUs up to 850 square feet in size are exempt from lot coverage requirements. And then for subsection C within 1884.020, so that's our ADU chapter, that requires a demolition permit for a detached garage that is going to be replaced with an accessory dwelling unit to be reviewed with the application for the accessory dwelling unit and issued at the same time. And that's one of the requirements from one of the new state laws from Senate Bill 897. So this other slide is a little bit more lengthy. This one pertains specifically to all the changes that were required in AB 897 and Senate Bill 2221. So subsections D, E, and F within our ADU chapter states that within an existing accessory structure may be expanded up to 150 square feet to accommodate ingress and egress. And that is for such construction such as a staircase for a second story ADU. It also amends property setbacks pursuant to the new state ADU laws, which allow an attached ADU within the front setback if an ADU of at least 800 square feet cannot meet the front, side, or rear setback requirements for the site. There's also amendments to setbacks, and as well as height restrictions pursuant to the new state ADU laws. So now an attached ADU within the front setback, if it pertains to the other section where you can't fit it in the side or rear setback, that can be limited to 25 feet in height. A detached ADU that's within a half mile of a major transit stop or a high quality transit corridor is limited to 18 feet, but they also get an extra 2 feet for a roof pitch. And then finally, in the last bullet point, if a detached ADU is on a lot that has a multifamily that's also a multi-story dwelling, shall be limited to 18 feet in height. And so we received a supplemental letter from a member of the public indicating that the setbacks for attached ADUs should be restricted to 4 feet for side and rear setbacks. And if your commission wants to discuss that more in detail later on after the presentation, we'll be glad to help answer any questions that you may have. So the parking and loading chapter is proposed to be amended, and this is the two amendments on here is from our code compliance division who requested this. And it's to require the continued use and availability of parking and loading areas. This will allow the enforcement of not allowing required parking areas to be used for the sale, lease, display, repair, advertising, or storage of trailers, boats, campers, mobile homes, and so on. And then within section 1872.040, which is our general requirements, that's proposed to be amended to reintroduce the prohibition of parking automobiles in the front yard landscaping of a property. And then the last section is for temporary use permits. And this is to clarify that the director shall approve a cash deposit for temporary uses to cover the cost of cleaning the site after the temporary use ceases to exist. And this is meant so that the director approves what that cash deposit amount is and not necessarily just leaving it up to whatever the applicant states that they think it is. They have to show some type of proof and get it approved by the director. And it's also to not allow them to just get away with paying a $500 deposit if that's not the correct amount that would be used to help clean up the site. On my last slide, just again, a recommendation tonight is to open and close the public hearing and adopt a resolution recommending the city, that your planning commission recommends to the city council that we approve zoning amendment file number ZA 2022-0005. And that's the.
Okay, any clarifying questions? Liam?
Chair. Can you go back, probably 3 slides now? There. No, I didn't get that one. Can you explain the top one, please? Sorry, the continued use of the parking. Is that if, like, if you're saying there's a zone destined for either loading, unloading, and parking that you can't use it for anything else? Is that what you're saying?
No, this is saying if, so if a parking lot or a driveway is approved for a site, that it's used for the parking of a vehicle, not for storage of a boat or RV for long terms.
Is this on the person's personal property, or you're saying on a street, or in a, like, you're talking about like a shared parking area, you mean?
So this is on personal property for within the, so it's within Title 18, it's a private property. So we've received lots of complaints with, or at least our code compliance has received a lot of complaints with people parking broken down or vehicles, or even storing boats long-term or RVs long-term on their properties. And in the past, that has not been allowed. And during the code update, I think in 2018, it was removed either on purpose or by accident. It wasn't clear to us during our research on why it was removed. But the code compliance division is asking to put that back in order to help allow access to the property for parking your personal vehicles that are registered through DMV. So they would have access to the driveway as well as getting to access to their garage to park their vehicles.
If I can play that back, you're saying, so I live in a general neighborhood where they've got reasonably large driveways, reasonably. And during the summer, a lot of people put their boat, because they're using it all the time, right? They put their boat in and out, and then they put it into storage for the winter, or they use their trailer or RV. You're saying they would no longer be able to do that in their own driveway?
They would be able to do it. They can still do it as long as they're keeping it active. If they're having it there and we're sitting there for a long period of time, for an excessive period, then that's where we're saying that there's an issue where they're not able to utilize their driveway or their garage for their intended purposes of parking their everyday vehicle or their car.
As long as they're actively using it, like I just said, I'm using my boat in the summer, or I'm using my RV in the summer. It's just if it's constantly parked with 4 flat tires and gathering dust, that's not allowed.
Correct.
Okay, okay, understood.
So, if you have an RV. Yep, sorry. So if you have an RV, Adam, and it's registered and the tires aren't flat, how do we enforce that? I'm not sure how you do that.
Let me pull up the exact code on my proposed changes on my computer to help better answer your question.
Oh, okay.
I don't have my mouse with me, so it's taking a little bit longer. So the code or the proposed language states so the title is continued use of parking for existing parcels, buildings, and land uses. Period. On-site parking and loading as required by the chapter shall be continually available and located to provide parking for the use they were intended to serve. So this is within our parking and loading chapter. And so within our parking and loading chapter, it specifies how many parking spaces are required for the use. So if it's a single family home, where this is an issue for this, for parking these other vehicles. So there's a requirement to have 2 off-street parking spaces, usually one covered, one at least uncovered. Again, they can both be covered so they can have parked 2 cars in the garage. And so when you park RV or a boat there long-term, that blocks access for the actual use for that garage or even the driveway where they can't park those 2 vehicles, their 2 cars, their automobiles on the site. And so that's what's causing the issue.
Okay. Thank you.
And Chair, can we go back to the one where there was the public comment that we got? Honestly, Adam, I tried to read it, but it was like 66 pages, so I got lost. So could you summarize what the person that submitted is concerned about? I was asking to change.
Sure. So the person who submitted a comment, their concern or what their opinion is that they believe that they should be able to have an attached ADU built onto their property and having 4-foot side and rear setbacks for an attached ADU. As part of the ordinance code cleanup, it does not state that how it's currently drafted. And so there's a couple options. Either your commission can direct us to make that change to allow it to have the 4-foot setbacks for attached ADUs as well as detached. Another option is to provide or direct staff to do more research and see if we should do that, if that's in compliance with state law.
Wait, what does the code say right now?
Right now,
this is for attached or detached, right?
No, Adam, when I looked at the code, it seems as if that the person did have a point that, I think we should just align with whatever the code says.
So it's interesting. So when you read the government code, it's not quite consistent, outrightly consistent with the guidebook that HCD publishes. The guidebook says attached and detached can be 4 feet. And I know that Adam and Cynthia did a deep dive on the government code today, and I don't think we would be in a bad spot if we put 4 feet. If we didn't, within 60 days, we're required to send our ordinance to HCD, and they may direct us to do 4 feet. So it really just depends on what the commission would prefer or what you would want to direct us to take to council. The concern I have on an attached ADU is it expands the footprint of the primary structure because it's attached to it, and their rear setback for a primary structure is either 15 or 20 feet. And if it's 4, you've created this very large primary structure on the lot. However, the codes related to ADUs are changing literally every year. So if that 4 feet, if they've just missed something in the government code, but HCD has put it in their guidance documents for ADUs, we could go either way, but more than likely HCD would probably ask us to put 4 feet.
I'm sorry, and right now it's what then?
The 4 feet only applies to detached units. That's how it reads in the current ordinance.
Attached, it's the regular.
No, I thought it was detached.
There's a 3-foot and a 5-foot minimum setback on table 18.44.
The current code does not differentiate between attached attached and detached, but the proposal does
Yeah,
differentiate.
that's what I meant, the document that Adam prepared for this evening.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what you're proposing is that there would be a difference. So you're saying attached would comply to the regular setbacks and detached could be within 4 feet. Is that what we're suggesting? No, I can't see the button there, Adam. It's very weak.
There we go. Correct.
Yeah.
It's,
I think we should suggest that some more research be done, put a recommendation back to us.
Go ahead.
so, so the proposal was, because of how the new laws were worded, it wasn't clear, but, yeah, so the proposal was to specifically state that the 4-foot side and rear property line setbacks would pertain to directly to detached ADUs, and then an attached ADU would have to meet the setback for the zoning district. That's the proposal. It's, if we want to switch it back to how it was originally worded, which was, it didn't specify, like Cynthia said, that it would be a minimum setback of 4 feet from the side and rear property line for an accessory dwelling unit. We can definitely do that. It's an easy fix or an easy change to do. It's, if I would recommend, if you want to give us a recommendation, instead of bringing it back to your commission, it could be recommend that we look into it a little bit more and then make the changes as staff sees fit to bring to the city council, because these new state laws, AB 897 and SB 897 and AB 2221 go in effect January 1st. That would be, if you want to direct us to make any changes, I would recommend to do that instead of bring it back to your commission.
So did I thought I remembered it was something that there was a height element to this too?
In the letter that was brought up by the individual from the public didn't mention height, it was just the setbacks.
Yeah.
But the state law mentions height as listed on this slide. So it's the last 3 bullet points. So an attached ADU would be limited to 25 feet in height, and then a detached ADU is limited to 16 feet unless they meet one of the criteria in the bottom 2 bullet points.
So, Adam, if you go to table 18.44, I think that's where I had my initial confusion, but Joe, I think that's for accessory structures, not accessory dwelling units.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's where I was looking at the 3-foot rear and side setback and the 5-foot rear and side setback. But I think the clarification is clear now. That's not for accessory dwelling units, it's for accessory structures.
Okay, can I ask staff a question and Jennifer or Cynthia answer? You did a deep dive today to try to straighten it all out in our mind and make sure we weren't setting ourselves up to necessarily send a letter to HCD, which I don't think is a good thing to do necessarily.
We're required to submit this to HCD.
Yeah, if we deviate.
No, we must submit it to HCD.
So if we have to submit it anyway, it may make a little difference. I just think we ought to try to really make sure we're in alignment with the law, state law. Because an attached accessory dwelling unit, they can go up to, what, 20, 25 feet?
In some circumstances.
Yeah, 4 feet from a property line added to the house sounds like an awful thing.
Well, in this case, let me take a step back. There have been so many laws passed related to ADUs. Some of them are they don't necessarily conflict, but they're not consistent. And in this case, if the 4 foot was allowed as far as a side setback, and someone needed to push their ADU into the front setback, it's only the side setback that would be the 25 feet, 4 feet away from the property line. But it is a concern. The laws have changed quite a bit I heard the mention of an accessory structure, and those regulations. Any accessory structure can be converted to an ADU now, regardless of size. So a 3,000 square foot barn could be converted to an ADU. It's just amazing what has been done as far as legislation on accessory dwelling units. So.
Right, and as she was saying, they're inconsistent. I think that's being kind. In two bills, it's addressed several different times, the setbacks, and they are somewhat inconsistent in how it's addressed. The side and rear setbacks are a bit inconsistent in several places.
I expect that more than likely this legislative year, there will be a big fix where they'll try and modulate everything into one piece of legislation. But then again, we thought that would happen on the commercial conversion and we got two separate laws. It's like, pick the one you want. So.
Well, and HCD will likely update the regulations.
Absolutely.
Because the regulations that are being cited to by the public comment are from July. So they have not been updated to reflect the two new bills. And so once that's updated, we would defer to HCD's interpretation.
They're updating that guidebook at least twice a year. I suspect it will be more often as things change.
So what would you recommend then? I mean, it sounds like it needs a little bit of research. There are some concerns there. I think that the email has some merit, at least merit enough to do some investigation. What do you guys think?
I think an easy fix would be just remove the reference to detached and be similar to what the legislation reads and just say accessory dwelling units. And if we do have someone who comes in with a 4-foot, see if there's anything we can do with them, if there's a neighbor issue or whatever it may be. Some of our lots are so large that hopefully there would not be that, but if we did have something happen on a lot of our smaller lots, it would be a much bigger impact.
So it says pass it the way it's published today.
I would remove the word detached from that line if that's how it reads. So we would want to match the government code.
Bullet number 3, right? Is that the one? An attached ADU, you're saying an ADU within the front setback. Is that the one you're referring to?
So there'll be a few changes that will be needed. On that one, on the third bullet point, the one in the middle. So instead of reading an attached ADU within the front setback, it will just read an attached ADU shall be limited to 25 feet in height. So we would eliminate within the front setback because they will be able to be within the side and rear setbacks with the reduced 4-foot. This front setback is where it pertains to if you cannot fit an 800 square foot ADU within the rear or side property of a parcel. So that's one of the new changes in the ADU law. And so that's why within this section, I was mentioning that if we allow an attached ADU, it's really complicated to explain.
Okay, so Adam,
Yes.
can we go to the draft ordinance? And can you highlight the area where the changes are, or are there multiple areas?
Sure, I can see if I can bring it up in here.
It's attachment 1, I think, to the resolution, right?
Mhm.
It's attachment 2.
So while that's loading, I guess it can't. Okay. So it'll be the draft ordinance.
It's attachment 2 to the planning commission ordinance, I believe. Or it's attachment 2 to the item.
If you scroll down to section 9. And scroll down. Scroll down one more page. Section 10. One more page. Okay. So then in letter E, where it says property line setbacks.
You may want to zoom in.
Tell me a little bit, Jenna, please. Good.
Go down a little bit too. Yeah, so number 3 underneath E, property line setbacks. So it says a minimum setback of 4 feet from the side and rear property lines is required. So I would change it to for an accessory dwelling unit. So just delete a detached. And then number 4, we would delete altogether, because that one was specific to attached dwelling units. So we would just have 1, 2, 3, and then number 5 would remain.
And become number 4.
Yeah, and Ms. Andrade's concern was that in our proposed here, we were making a distinction between attached and detached. And that's why I think Jennifer's recommending and Adam is proposing, we just remove that distinction, because that distinction for the wording for detached and attached is not necessary, if I'm reading Ms. Andrade's concern properly.
Right. So number 3, we would delete detach. We'll delete number 4 altogether. And then we would make edits to underneath F height, numbers 1 and 2 to match that as well.
And so by removing number 4, what happens then? So now what goes in its place then?
Nothing would go in its place. Number 5 would just become number 4, because so how it was proposed, number 3 pertained only to, or proposed to pertain only to detached ADUs.
Mhm.
And then number 4 was only for attached ADUs.
Got it?
So number 5 would become number 4 and that,
Correct.
those kind of cleanup things.
What happens when you delete one?
Okay.
And then in F underneath height, we would delete number 1 because it's not needed anymore. And then number 2, we would delete, so it reads an attached accessory dwelling unit, and then we would delete the rest of the sentence up to the comma. So we would delete permitted within the front setback as allowed in subdivision E of this section. And then we would remain the rest. So to read, an attached accessory dwelling unit shall be limited to 25 feet in height, or the height limitation of the zoning district, whichever is less.
And then you delete number 3, right? Because that says detached.
Number 3 would remain because this is for heights. So
Okay, yeah, so one is height and one is, yeah, got it, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay.
Aren't they both height?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Number 2, right? It says shall be limited to 25 feet in height.
Yes.
And number 3 says shall be limited to 16 feet in height. Sorry, what's the difference?
So for number 2, underneath the new state laws, attached ADUs can be limited to 25 feet.
Attached versus detached.
Yeah, number 3 is detached
Got
ADU.
Okay.
And a quick question, does that include a 2-story ADU or is that a single story?
So basically it could prohibit a detached ADU to be 2 stories. And then if it's attached, it could be 25 feet, so potentially be 2 stories tall.
So the attempt on the 25 feet was not only for a 2-story in certain circumstances, but to allow an ADU on top of a garage, because it's a lot taller.
Got you, thank you. So it can either be on top of a garage or it can be 2 stories as an ADU. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think it's time to open the public comment portion of this item. Jenna, would you remind everybody how to connect with us?
Thank you, Chair Mueller. if you're joining us today using Zoom and wish to provide public comment, you may do so by using the raised hand feature. If you're calling in using your phone, use the raise hand feature by dialing *9 and then dialing *6. You may also send us an email at pcpubliccomment@morganhill.ca.gov.
Okay, do we have any raised hands?
There are no raised hands.
So I see none. I'll close the public comment then, and we'll move on to the planning commission. Now, remember, I think the discussion is about the ordinance, the way we talked about changing it just now. Does anybody have any questions?
No, it's like trying to read the Rosetta Stone for the setbacks.
Hey, it's a legal document, you know what I mean?
And you make one change and it just
Right, and then
dominoes down
change it.
into other changes.
Would somebody care to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. If I can remember what the motion was supposed to be.
Motion to recommend approval.
Yep, I make a motion to recommend approval
To the city council.
to the city council with the amendment.
With the amendments that we're talking about. Is there a second?
You're not paying attention?
So the amended changes would not differentiate detached and attached ADUs for setbacks. So an ADU would be allowed to have a setback of 4 feet from the side and rear property lines. And that's pretty much it, just cleaning up the rest of the sections to match that.
Does that mean that if in the zoning that you're in, there's a 10-foot
Is the microphone on? Yeah.
Yeah, could you clarify that applies in all zoning districts, where you could have a 4-foot setback to begin with to a 20-foot setback in some areas, that we're saying that a ADU can be put 4 feet away from somebody's fence or property?
Right. So this would apply to all residential and mixed-use zones, and so it'll be 4 feet from the property line. So regardless if they have a 15-foot side yard setback or a 50-foot side yard setback, it'll be 4 feet for an ADU.
And is that either state law or that's state law? So we really don't have a choice.
We do not. The only thing we could do is be more lenient. And for example, some communities allow ADUs on the property line with a 1-hour firewall, but the 1-hour firewall has to be on the property line. But state law says a minimum of 4 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, did I get a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded.
Yeah, I have a motion and a second. Jenna, would you call roll for the vote?
Chair Mueller,
Aye.
Commissioners Tonda,
Aye.
Habib,
Aye.
Downey,
Aye.
Blake,
Aye.
and Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0-0.
601.
Yeah.
Okay, that closes that item and we move on to the director's report.
So, director's report, we did not have a official discussion of our holiday breaks. That November 22nd, we're suggesting that we cancel the meeting. Thanksgiving week, a lot of people will be traveling. Also, December 27th, as much as everyone loves coming to meetings, I don't think you want to do it on furlough after Christmas.
Right.
So those two meetings. Our next meeting then will be on December 13th. And right now we have one public hearing, and that will be a proposed general plan amendment that you've heard in a prelim discussion before. So, and that will be noticed appropriately and brought to you that evening. So also happy to answer any questions, or if you had any lingering ideas, questions, issues you'd like to discuss from the workshop. Yeah.
And because we only have one item on the next meeting, it was suggested that might be a good time to do a little bit more legal training. Is there anything you would like to
update on or something new that you would like me to, you can either tell me now, maybe email me, and I can prepare something brief for that evening as well.
Okay, with that, I believe we're ready to adjourn the meeting.
Sure. I did want to let everybody know, and I told a couple commissioners during the break, the Cochrane Commons Phase 2 that you approved at the October meeting was approved by council 5-0 across the board, resolutions and ordinance. It will be coming next week for a second read on the plan development ordinance. So
About the commercial piece, was that?
they went with your recommendations 100%.
Excellent.
And Chair,
Okay, yes.
I just had a suggestion for us to put on the agenda when next we meet to for the commission to consider whether or not to make the time earlier, 6 p.m. rather than 7 p.m.
If we want to make a discussion on that, but I believe municipal code requires public hearings not to start before 7 p.m.
We have a council policy, it's CP 98-02, and its city council meetings shall not be, public hearings at city council meetings shall be set for no earlier than 7 p.m. I have not found anything related to planning commission, but as a quasi judicial body, planning commission has always matched council. But I can do some more research to see if there's anything specific to planning commission before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great.
Jennifer, I did have one more quick question. So I know briefly Matt was going over the changes to the landscaping for Redwood Tech Park, removing those redwood trees. So what is the alternative landscaping design? Is it something that's still going to provide that screening that we had initially?
We will be looking at that for screening, but I have not seen a new landscape plan as of yet. We have just been talking quite a bit about the impact of the redwood trees and the alternatives, or were there alternatives, and they chose to remove those. Due to I don't think we have an efficient landscape ordinance, water efficient landscape ordinance, and it would have been difficult to meet the formulas required if they had continued to use the redwood trees.
I just thought, didn't somebody appeal on the one project along Monterey?
They did. The Monterey Curly project was appealed. That will be heard by council next week, as well as the Granada Hotel, fifth floor expansion. That will also be heard next week as well. It's a big night at council next week. Development services items dominate that meeting agenda.
Anything else? Okay, I'll officially adjourn the meeting. Any students, you got a break by about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay. Next meeting is December 13th. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.